Tonight on 24, the intensification of behind-the-scenes disagreements to seize power in the Islamic Republic. Iran International's exclusive report on the efforts by Mojtaba Khamenei's opponents to return powers to the Leadership Council. Continued drone attacks on police stations and suppression centers of Basij forces in Iran. At least 8 checkpoints and 1 police headquarters were targeted. Washington's $10 million reward for information on key leaders of the Islamic Republic, Mojtaba Khamenei, Ali Larijani, and Vali Asghar Hijazi, are among these individuals. And the U.S. president says the Islamic Republic will ultimately be overthrown by the people. According to Trump, the United States will carry out very severe attacks on Iran in the coming days. From Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad. Viewers of Iran International, hello and good evening. According to information received by Iran International, Mojtaba Khamenei's physical condition and inability to communicate regularly with officials have fueled concerns among a segment of ruling clerics in Iran. Based on this report, Ali Asghar Hijazi, deputy head of Ali Khamenei's office, and Ali Reza Arafi, a Guardian Council jurist, are among those criticizing Mojtaba Khamenei's managerial capabilities. Consequently, they are attempting to return the power and authority to govern the country to a provisional leadership council. My colleague Morteza Kazemian is with us from London. Morteza, it seems that with these complex conditions that exist, with Mojtaba Khamenei being injured, and the fact that even after several days since his appointment, not even a single audio file has been released from him, and alongside that, these internal disagreements, the situation is very complex in those upper echelons of power regarding who should hold power from now on.
Yes, it was also entirely imaginable and highly predictable, because that fractured ship of the Islamic Republic has effectively lost its ultimate captain, Ali Khamenei, and of course the various rival power-sharing factions desperately want to take absolute control of this ship's helm. And of course, deep down in the dark hold of this vessel, they have mercilessly taken the entire Iranian nation hostage, dragging them along with them by force into violent storms and deeply unforeseen events in this increasingly turbulent and dangerous ocean. It was thoroughly predictable that these aggressive power-sharing factions, even though they rely on common political interests to survive, would also inevitably have fierce disagreements in some crucial areas. I'm referring to the insightful quote, Pezeshkian, who in November, after the 12-day war, emphasized in Parliament and expressed happiness that Khamenei didn't face any problems in the 12-day war, because, in his words, all factions would get involved, and this conflict was something Pezeshkian said he feared most, meaning the absence of Khamenei. This absence occurred on the first day of this war. Now, it's natural for different power factions to demand their share. Of course, I should mention here that some of these government clerics naturally have their own ideological approaches, and also look at the system's interests from their own perspective. Specifically, regarding the significant political news you just read, it is profoundly clear that someone like Ali Asghar Hijazi recognizes the underlying reality. As a man with a deep intelligence background who has been one of the most important and influential figures in Ali Khamenei's inner office for well over 3 decades, it is obvious he intimately knows that Mojtaba Khamenei is fundamentally not in a position to manage this volatile situation. Ultimately, it is abundantly clear that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has merely put up a superficial signboard as the supreme leader, while firmly taking control of the complex political game itself. Similarly, someone like Arafi, who is a member of the Guardian Council's jurists, has connections within the power structure, has a background, and in the assembly of experts, he too would have such an approach from the perspective of preserving the system. When these individuals pursue a change in the situation for conditions to return to a leadership council, it's because fundamentally there's no news of Mojtaba. We are supposedly dealing with a leader who cannot even muster the effort to provide a simple voice message. When a written statement was finally released after an agonizing 5 days of silence, it was entirely unclear who actually authored the text. Its tone was completely disconnected, standing miles away from the everyday language of the youth who actively support a government. This raises an alarming question. How does this unproven individual, someone completely devoid of any real-world management background, without even a single memorable speech, article, or published book to his name, intended to successfully navigate this highly critical situation? Examining this flawed approach, we simply need to place the valid concerns of Hijazi and Arafi alongside the growing worries of competing power factions aggressively demanding their own share. From prominent figures like Mohseni Ejei to Sadiq Larijani to Hosseini Bushhari to Mojtaba, who serves as the spiritual father of the Steadfastness Front, and even to Hassan Khomeini. I should explicitly mention here that Hassan Khomeini was fundamentally in fierce competition with Mojtaba Khamenei, even during the rigorous theological lessons and classes they attended together in the seminary. Yet despite past rivalries, all these powerful individuals, from Mohseni Ejei to Mojtaba to Hassan Khomeini, have now aligned to congratulate Mojtaba's leadership, Mojtaba's appointment, and Mojtaba's formal introduction, strictly driven by their overlapping shared interests. But everyone knows that he's a nobody, and the real power is with that security faction ruling the Revolutionary Guard, which has taken the reins. How much connection does he have with Ghalibaf? How much connection does he have with Vahidi? How much connection does he have with Ali Larijani? These are those vague questions that have increasingly turned the Islamic Republic situation into a repressive mafia government, and naturally, one against national interests.
But isn't the ongoing political crisis really much deeper and more complex than this? Let's even assume, right now, that they genuinely want to return executive power to the Leadership Council. Many of these aging men, who are the lingering remnants of the Islamic Republic and are supposedly moving the government forward, while the public largely considers them to be walking dead.
Without a doubt, the crisis for the Islamic Republic is far too deep for conditions to be changed just by changing the leadership. There's a super crisis, and this super crisis is intertwined with the entirety of the Islamic Republic, with the Islamic Republic's approaches. In a sense, either the Islamic Republic must surrender to Trump, surrender to America, relinquish power not just to America and Israel, but to the Iranian nation, and entirely for national interests, for the fate of millions and tens of millions of Iranian citizens, relinquish power, or it must continue on this very path. And I should mention here that even if Trump, for whatever reason, ends the war tomorrow, it will be the beginning of the Islamic Republic's massive crises, not just in the economic sphere, in the reconstruction of the astronomical damages resulting from this war, and the lack of credit resources, lack of foreign currency, lack of oil revenue, and non-existent credits. But the crisis of the Islamic Republic is also intertwined with the crisis of legitimacy and the crisis of moral legitimacy. The Islamic Republic, after the January massacre, is more than ever finished in the eyes of the Iranian people. Such a political regime cannot continue its situation by settling accounts with public opinion. Not to mention, as I said, it's fundamentally grappling with massive economic crises. Even if, and I emphasize, if Trump ends the war tomorrow, whereas we know that the Islamic Republic has currently gotten involved in a war and unfortunately has involved the Iranian nation and Iran in a war that is historical, unprecedented in Iran's history. Its consequences are unpredictable not just until now, but in the coming days, and it's fundamentally unclear what the fate of the Islamic Republic for survival, and the fate of those connected to the government, the power holders like Ali Larijani, Ejei, Ghalibaf, Radan, and Mojtaba Khamenei, where all this will lead.
Thank you, Morteza Kazemian from Mountain. Information received by Iran International indicates that reconnaissance and targeting operations against checkpoints and police headquarters by the Israeli army are still ongoing. According to these reports, 8 checkpoints and 1 police headquarters in Absariya, Tehran, were targeted in the attack. Meanwhile, a video was also published in state media an hour ago, showing that in Tehran, a funeral ceremony for 8 Basij members who were killed in an attack on a checkpoint was also targeted by a drone.
the funeral ceremony for the martyrs was attacked.
Pay attention. Please disperse immediately. Do not gather in this area. Disperse, folks. Disperse.
They're afraid of the martyrs' blood. Do it. Disperse.
Please don't gather. Go into the alleys.
Meanwhile, an audio message has been circulated on social media attributed to one of the commanders of the suppression forces, and it includes recommendations for controlling the panic of the forces when confronting Israeli drones. In this audio file, the presence of suppression forces in schools is confirmed, and forces are asked to disperse in quiet alleys if they hear the sound of a drone.
Dear friends, please note regarding the checkpoints, the vehicle that came and targeted them was a Heron TP drone. It can maintain presence over Tehran for 16 hours. It takes 10 hours to get there, 10 hours to return, and has a flight endurance of 36 hours. It can launch 8 missiles, and its missiles like shoe pellets, meaning after they explode, the pellets spread out and can cause casualties. But this Shalai's device is very expensive. It's for collecting signals. It's come over Tehran to collect new data because, they've run out of targets they used to hit with fighter jets. It's collected signals over schools, over bases where a lot of cell phones are on to provide data for fighter jets to come and hit later. And it's also used that launcher it has to hit checkpoints. What friends do when they hear this spooling engine sound over Tehran before air defense hits it is first turn off all their phones. Don't have them on airplane mode, especially those who are gathered in bases, in schools, in mosques, wherever they are. Turn off your phones so data doesn't get sent. At checkpoints, when they hear this sound, what they do is turn off their phones and clear the area, meaning leave the cars and barriers in the street and go into the surrounding alleys. Take a position so if an armed person comes, they can hit them. Otherwise, the device is just passing by. Even if it launches one and it hits among people, if they are safely in the gutter on the street corner or hidden in the alleys, they won't get hurt. Don't be scared. Right now, we're passing by at night and we see everyone on the road is visibly scared, looking up at the sky, thinking an FPV drone is hitting. However, there's no one on the ground. No one on the ground has attacked them yet. They're simply clearing the way for later so they can move their teams, control this spreading fear and panic with correct action and a clear understanding of what's happening. Don't be scared for no reason.
Regarding the ongoing attacks on Islamic Republic positions in Iran, let's see more images from the past hours.
They hit the Shiraz Electronics Industries facility again. Electronics Industries. Thanks, Bibi and Trump.
Oh! Yeah. It's not black.
The Absaria police headquarters here is also wrecked. Of course, we'll stand on our own feet and rebuild everything again. The final days of the destructive, troublesome regime.
Ruhollah Rahimpour, journalist and political analyst, has also joined us. Mr. Rahimpour, do you think these attacks on checkpoints and Basij members have the capacity to potentially dismantle that repressive system in the final days of the government?
Greetings to you, Mr. Farahzad, and also to our esteemed viewers joining us today. By itself, this isolated tactic doesn't fully have this capacity. However, as one of the broader factors that can confront the structure of the Islamic Republic with a serious problem on the verge of systemic collapse, it can certainly be evaluated in this way. There is a larger set of strategic actions that can collapse the Islamic Republic from within. Chief among them is decisive action to weaken the state's repressive apparatus. This specific type of action that's being taken, or, directly targeting those who enforce the government's rule on the streets, plays a crucial role. This deliberate strategy happens, specifically so that the overall morale of the security forces faces severe attrition. By ensuring their morale gets constantly eroded over time, gradually deep-seated fear and a widespread unwillingness to fight are created among them. And their numbers, quantitatively speaking, on the streets, begin to decrease. Their visible presence clearly diminishes. The second critical issue is that actually the weakening of the state's repressive apparatus happens directly by targeting these specific checkpoints. This action sends a powerful message that in all the places you think there's a high possibility of a security confrontation on the street, that possibility can be effectively eliminated. Furthermore, it also helps to significantly increase mounting internal pressure on the government within the country. The more the possibility of strict security control on the streets is systematically weakened and disrupted, the more likely it is that the public's presence on the streets can happen with greater motivation and at a much lower personal cost. This dynamic is one essential part of the broader conditions needed for the complete overthrow of the government or its internal collapse. Alongside this growing civil mobilization, strategically targeting key leaders and commanders, vital command centers, and military installations can effectively combine a set of these factors together to achieve systemic change.
Given that we clearly see, despite all this intense bombing, some officials of the Islamic Republic still confidently come to the streets, demonstrating that they maintain a relative level of internal cohesion. Considering this resilience, do you think that the very committed religious core of the Basijis might still continue their strict domestic repression despite the constant threat of drone attacks?
Look, right now, the government is actively selling a calculated narrative to society about how today, during the Quds Day March, numerous high-ranking political and security officials were present on the street. They were walking alongside the ordinary people. And this is being heavily broadcasted as state propaganda to highlight their supposed bravery and courage. Whereas, as you know, it was almost possible to say with absolute certainty that the Americans and Israelis wouldn't even consider striking pro-government civilian demonstrations, meaning the people were never in actual danger. The sole reason these officials are actually showing this public presence right now is because they were absolutely sure the march wouldn't be hit by any strikes. Otherwise, if we look back over the past 2 weeks, all of them were hiding deep in their secure shelters and basically weren't willing to appear in public under any circumstances. However, this carefully crafted narrative of resilience is fragile when, over the next few days, these same officials inevitably retreat again to their hideouts and completely refuse to appear in public. This false narrative will once again break apart. Basically, the manufactured narrative of bravery and courage among these political and security leaders will be thoroughly invalidated. This very situation might affect the forces process. There are a number of forces within the government structure and within society who, in any case, especially ideologically, are committed to this government and are making their efforts. But if the organizational communication, the chain of command, and the command cycle or command chain get broken, get disrupted, they've been trained in such a way that they must receive orders. Being fire at will can create some resistance, but it can't be stable, permanent, and everlasting. The type of training that has been developed among security and military forces in the Islamic Republic is very dependent on hierarchy and the transmission of orders from above. In this way, it can be expected that a number of these forces will still continue to resist. But naturally, at that moment when the government's power is stripped away, when, a failed state situation occurs, many of these forces will definitely fall away.
Given that, many of these attacks are in crowded streets and precision targeting, even with complex technologies, ultimately has its own headaches, how much will this raise concerns about civilian casualties or those around these checkpoints if it becomes a systematic approach?
This grave concern regarding civilian safety will definitely exist and persist. Just as before, even when the conflict wasn't actively unfolding on the streets, the possibility of civilian casualty numbers rising, clearly existed and was steadily increasing. From now on, when the tactical approach of attacking government street forces becomes a primary operational method for American forces, and especially the Israelis, these tragic numbers will unfortunately increase significantly due to densely populated urban environments. Consequently, Americans and Israelis must definitely be held fully responsible in this regard, and actually strictly adhere to the conditions that exist based on international conventions regarding wars. At the same time, the Islamic Republic must also actively uphold its own fundamental responsibility. The fact that they constantly ask citizens to be present on the streets, in mosques, and in various vulnerable public places is deeply troubling. They even allow a considerable amount of public traffic directly around highly sensitive checkpoint perimeters. This dangerous practice is actually one of the critical issues that fundamentally calls into question the Islamic Republic's responsibility and duty of care in this regard. Naturally, the Islamic Republic should actively prevent the large crowded presence of people in public thoroughfares during such crises. Whereas, just yesterday, when you read the third leader's message, it explicitly directs supporters to continue this hazardous public presence. In fact, in my opinion, this tactic is essentially a cruel method of using innocent people as human shields, which unfortunately will inevitably add to the devastating civilian casualty numbers.
Thank you, Ruhollah Rahimpour, journalist and analyst. Minutes ago, the U.S. State Department announced it's paying up to $10 million in rewards for information on Mojtaba Khamenei and several other senior officials of the Islamic Republic and the Revolutionary Guard Corps. The published list mentions the names of Mojtaba Khamenei, Ali Asghar Hijazi, Yahya Rahim Safavi, Ali Larijani, Eskandar Momeni, Ismail Khatib, and also several IRGC commanders. Meanwhile, the U.S. president told Fox News Radio that the Islamic Republic will ultimately be overthrown by the people of Iran. According to Donald Trump, for people who don't have weapons, overthrowing the government is a very difficult task, but in his opinion, it will eventually happen. Trump also said that the United States will carry out very severe attacks on Iran in the coming days. He emphasized that America doesn't need help to confront Iran, even though Putin is probably providing some military assistance to the Islamic Republic. Meanwhile, an hour ago, the U.S. Secretary of War said the Islamic Republic's military capabilities have been extensively weakened and its missile reserves decreased by above 90%.
But it's not just that Iran currently lacks an efficient or even functional air force to secure its skies, or that its navy has been sent to the bottom of the Persian Gulf, or that their active stockpile of missiles and drones is rapidly decreasing every single day. Most importantly, they simply do not have the industrial capability to build any more of these weapons. This is a critical point, as I want to emphasize. Very soon, all of Iran's defense companies will be utterly destroyed. For example, just 2 days ago, all of Iran's ballistic missile production capabilities, literally every company that produces all these crucial missile components, was systematically destroyed and defeated. Numerous strategic buildings, large industrial complexes, and vital production lines across Iran were completely destroyed. Therefore, we are hitting not just the active missiles they currently maintain in their arsenals, but more importantly, we are making absolutely sure they will not have any capability to produce more of them from now on. Their key production lines, military factories, and advanced innovation centers were permanently eliminated.
Meanwhile, the Israeli army announced it's ready to continue operations against the Islamic Republic for at least a few more weeks, because in Israel's belief, many targets of the Iranian government still remain. Our correspondents Reza Mohadis from Jerusalem and Samira Garai are with us. Reza, tell us more about these targets the Israelis are talking about.
Exactly, and this is the comprehensive report that Fardad published regarding the Israeli army just hours ago, marking the conclusion of the second week of the joint military operation between the United States and Israel. In this detailed document, it was strongly emphasized that the Israeli army has been told they have declared full readiness for these operations to continue for at least a few more weeks inside Iran. The report also clearly stated that the primary reason for this extended timeline is that numerous highly critical targets remain, located both inside the capital of Tehran and in various strategic parts of the country. country. Additionally, the chief of staff of the Israeli army, Samir, also spoke directly with Israel's I-24TP Fardad about the current ongoing situation. Furthermore, he also explicitly stated that this ongoing war with the Islamic Republic of Iran will probably last until mid-next month. To clarify, he indicated it will last at least until next month, which is April. Meanwhile, the Israeli army, in this very same detailed report, also provided comprehensive statistics regarding the various tactical operations it has successfully carried out over the past 2 weeks. Additionally, it shared its current official estimate for the total number of casualties affecting military, law enforcement, Basij forces, and IRGC personnel. The reset report stated they estimate that between 4,000 and 5,000 security personnel affiliated with the Islamic Republic have been killed. These include members of the Basij militia, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and local law enforcement. The document also noted that the military attacks are strategically focused on striking the government, law enforcement hubs, weapons manufacturing industries, and their nuclear program, illustrating the sheer scale of the operation. In just the past 2 weeks, they mentioned dropping over 10,000 bombs on key targets across Iran. In total, they carried out 7,600 separate tactical strikes, organized into 380 continuous waves. Furthermore, it was mentioned that 2,000 attacks were specifically directed at government headquarters, while another 4,700 attacks were directly related to the Islamic Republic's missile program. As reported by Fardad a few hours ago, Avi Defren, the spokesperson for the Israeli army, also announced in a detailed video address her routine message that he usually publishes here on Friday nights, just before the traditional arrival of Shabbat, that last night a highly targeted military strike was carried out. This precision operation struck the administrative intelligence headquarters of the Khatam al-Anbiya base. He significantly mentioned that it is highly probable that several senior intelligence officials of the Islamic Republic regime were present at that exact location during the attack. He said the Israeli army is reviewing the intelligence they're receiving, and they're evaluating what happened. And finally, I should also mention, just last night and this morning, only 90 Israeli army fighter jets with over 200 bombs targeted several security headquarters of the Islamic Republic, Just minutes before we spoke, the Israeli army also said it had started a new wave of extensive attacks in Tehran.
Samira, also tell us about the latest reactions in America, especially, the things the Secretary of War is saying, both about casualties and about the war situation.
Fardy, so a press conference was held this morning at the Pentagon. Mr. Hexes, the Secretary of War, was present alongside General Keane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Their main focus was really on how the mainstream media is covering the ongoing war news. And they addressed the specific headlines they choose and the points they highlight. Like that drone story that, if I'm not mistaken, we talked about just 2 days ago. The potential danger that, the Islamic Republic's drones might pose to America in California. These things were thoroughly discussed today. ABC had originally published that report, and today, they actually came out and corrected it too. Well, we heard this exact same part last night too, in a post that, Mr. Trump had published on his Truth Social account. Mr. Trump was saying that if you go read the New York Times, or if you go watch CNN, you'd absolutely think the United States is somehow losing this war. These remarks were, really important remarks that Mr. Hexes referred to during the broadcast. Alongside these discussions, they also gave the very latest details of the ongoing operations, specifically about, the tragic crash that happened yesterday concerning that massive military refueling plane. No official reason has been stated just yet, other than, what we briefly heard from CENTCOM yesterday. But Mr. Trump did a radio interview today with a Fox News website, which is a very important platform for him. He talked a whole lot about the situation in Iran, and it was a surprisingly detailed interview. One specific part that, really stood out, in my opinion, was the lengthy discussion about the ongoing demonstrations and the people's protests. The host specifically asked him if citizens might come out to the streets and demonstrate once this military operation is finally over. He stated that the current struggle seems incredibly difficult because the regime is heavily armed, whereas the everyday people are completely empty-handed. He fully understands if citizens are hesitant and choose not to protest due to this severe imbalance of power. However, he firmly believes that the Islamic Republic will gradually weaken over time. Eventually, a decisive opportunity will arise for the people to rise up and finish off the regime entirely. In another part of the conversation, he was asked about Karg Island. Referencing a book he had written back in 1988, he recalled an interview where he boldly stated that if it were up to him, he would take control of Karg. He emphasized this tactical move because roughly 90, but this time he said, "I'm not talking about this, and it would be my mistake if I were to come and inform you about military operations." Regarding the Strait of Hormuz, there's still, a lot of discussion here in the media and a lot of pressure on the Trump administration. We know the Pentagon is going to deploy a special group of Marines and U.S. Navy forces. Around 2,500 100 new naval forces are scheduled to go to the region tomorrow.
Iran's leadership isn't, in a better situation either these days. They desperately went and hid themselves deep underground. They are like total cowards, scurrying away like mice that go and hide underground. This so-called supreme leader of theirs, we know he's both, severely injured and most likely incapacitated. He sustained severe injuries. We heard a message from him. This so-called message was, a written text. He wanted to invite people to unity, but we see that those who talk about popular unity had massacred tens of thousands of protesters. His father is dead, and he's also injured, terrified, on the run, and their situation is completely chaotic. Who's in charge there right now? They probably don't even know themselves. Every hour that passes, we know, and we know that they know, that the military capabilities of this evil regime are collapsing. They can't even talk or communicate with each other, let alone coordinate. And our resolute response is this: we'll keep pushing, we'll keep going, and we'll move forward. We won't show any mercy to the enemy.
Fardad, Mr. Trump also referred to this discussion about Mojtaba Khamenei in an interview he conducted, and that some form of him still remains. That he has sustained a major injury is clear from the reports we heard yesterday from the Islamic Republic, and these statements by Mr. Hexes that you just published and broadcast, that Mojtaba Khamenei's face seems to have become such that, as Netanyahu also mentioned yesterday, he currently cannot appear in public. These are discussions that Mr. Trump has also raised regarding leadership. And another point I wanted to make about Mojtaba Khamenei, it seems they have officially set a reward. Just an hour ago, a statement was released by the FBI featuring images of Mojtaba Khamenei, Larijani, Mr. Khatib, and Rahim Safavi. It is as if they have put a direct bounty on their heads. They want to clearly convey to the public that the United States is now actively looking for these specific individuals. So if you happen to have any credible information, they urge you to come forward and get $1 million reward.
Thank you both, Samira Garai inside the White House and my colleague Reza Mahades from Jerusalem. The Wall Street Journal says the U.S. is sending more troops and an additional warship to the Middle East. According to 3 U.S. officials, Pitt has approved the U.S. Central Command's request to deploy some of its forces, along with a Marine Expeditionary Unit. These officials say the USS Tripoli, which is based in Japan, is moving towards the Middle East along with a number of Marine forces. At a Pentagon press conference, Dan Kine, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the U.S. Armed Forces, said that today the heaviest attacks are being carried out to destroy the regime's military capabilities.
We relentlessly continue to strike their missile and advanced drone capabilities, so they cannot hit our bases, our deployed forces, and our regional partners. We also continue to significantly devastate Iran's navy. This means we are systematically targeting their dangerous mine-laying capabilities and their operational capabilities to attack vulnerable commercial ships. Of course, we are also heavily striking their industrial infrastructure, ensuring they can no longer rebuild these systems to harm Americans and our partners. Just as Admiral Cooper clearly stated on Wednesday, Iran's overall combat force is constantly decreasing, ultimately as a result of our continued precise attacks, as the Secretary said.
To launch every hour.
We've hit over 6,000 targets, and our offensive packages are getting stronger every hour. CENTCOM now has complete dominance and control over the enemy, and as a result, we've seen a serious reduction in their missile and drone attacks, as the Secretary mentioned. We've effectively stripped Iran's navy of its offensive combat power, including all Soleimani-class ships that had advanced anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles. We've completely neutralized all of them, and our crucial work in this region is still ongoing. But I want to make something very clear to the entire world. The only preventing the safe and secure flow of commercial shipping traffic along the strait, specifically along the Strait of Hormuz, is Iran. They are a hostile force that, despite there being some traffic and some daily passage and transit, it is Iran that continuously disrupts this vital global movement. We are still actively hitting their military bases, hitting their supply depots, and relentlessly hitting their underground missile arsenals. And CENTCOM will continue its attacks. We will continue to make progress in this area, hitting their factories, their weapons and ammunition depots, and we will continue again in the coming days, especially today.
Farzeen Nadimi, a senior research fellow for defense and security affairs at the Washington Institute, is with us from this city. Mr. Nadimi, does CENTCOM's request for new forces, equipment, and a destroyer indicate that the operation is becoming more complex or challenging?
It doesn't necessarily mean the overall operation will become significantly more challenging. Anyway, every military operation inherently has its own unique tactical challenges, but I think the strategic deployment of the USS Tripoli carrier strike group from the Philippine Sea to the Persian Gulf region clearly indicates that the specialized marine forces aboard this ship, about 2,200 Marines, are probably needed. We all know that maritime tensions in the Persian Gulf and the vital Strait of Hormuz have really escalated recently. There is currently widespread talk about starting tanker escort operations, or at least creating some kind of reliable maritime security for passing commercial ships. This remains an exceptionally difficult task given the immense geographical dominance the Islamic government holds over the strategic northern coasts. And you know, it is true that Iran's main navy and larger Iranian ships, whether from the IRGC or the regular army, which were equipped with dangerous long-range missiles and had a longer reach, have largely been destroyed. But still, the immediate coastal threat persists. The IRGC's fleet of agile fast attack boats, which are like hundreds of them in total, pose a serious problem. A significant number of them are still intact and safe. Consequently, we should fully expect geopolitical tensions to remain notably high throughout the volatile Persian Gulf region for the foreseeable future. Furthermore, there is increasingly serious talk circulating right now regarding potential coastal operations, as well as targeted military attacks on strategic regional islands. If the Pentagon and CENTCOM ultimately want to provide a robust array of tactical options to the US president, deploying a highly trained Marine Expeditionary Unit is crucial. Specifically, utilizing the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit stationed aboard the USS Tripoli can be a profoundly effective deterrent. Of course, I should mention this important point. While the USS Tripoli itself is an amphibious assault ship, because it is from the America class, its primary focus is significantly more on air operations. So you could say this ship effectively operates as a small GB aircraft carrier, so to speak. It is smaller compared to massive 4-class or Nimitz-class carriers, but it carries 20 advanced F-35B fighter jets. These represent a special type specifically designed for the US Marine Corps that can take off and land vertically on the ship, and now in some cases on prepared surfaces on land. Furthermore, this deployment can provide a lot more tactical efficiency to the regional US Air Force conducting critical operations along Iran's coasts. It can be expected that when the strategic decision is made to put significantly more pressure on the IRGC Navy in the Persian Gulf, naturally, these advanced F-35B stealth aircraft and these highly trained Marine forces will play a crucial role, along with the two transport ships, the USS Orleans and the USS San Diego, which are accompanying the USS Tripoli and heading towards the Persian Gulf at maximum speed. These combined assets can be very important. Ultimately, this powerful maritime strike group can provide many more flexible military options to the US president.
Mr. Nadimi, increasingly, especially I guess from the American side, we're hearing that the Islamic Republic's military forces have been severely weakened, and there's even talk that there aren't many targets left to hit. If the war really reaches a stage where there are no specific strategic targets left to hit, but the central government is still in place, what kind of complexities does that create, and what usually happens at this stage?
Of course, I believe there are still numerous strategic targets that can be expected to remain viable for military operations for a few more weeks. Israeli defense officials have also commented recently, including in public statements today, that they still have many high-priority targets on their operational list for attacking. In my opinion, there are certainly enough vital strategic targets available to sustain these attacks for at least another week or two. Even at the point when these primary attacks really end, naturally there are some targets that, due to their extreme operational complexity, their vast geographical spread, and the large area of those facilities, will probably require subsequent and supplementary attacks to ensure complete neutralization. And when military commanders finally decide that the broader strategic phase of the operation is pretty much over, the localized tactical phase just begins in earnest. Now, Israel, given its unprecedented dominance over Iran's contested airspace and sprawling urban areas, utilizing various advanced types of unmanned aircraft and surveillance drones, well, you could say it has pretty much started this critical phase by systematically attacking those vulnerable security checkpoints and local police stations. Moving forward, it can definitely be expected that this newly initiated tactical phase will continually evolve and expand with significantly greater breadth, precision, and overall operational intensity. Furthermore, those heavy air assets, which are usually reserved and strictly used for high-value strategic targets, in the current situation will be increasingly redirected towards eliminating smaller, more immediate tactical targets on the ground. Right now, these formidable B-1 bombers, which were originally flying directly from the United States, are strategically stationed at Fairford Air Base in Britain. This forward deployment means they can pretty much fly permanently and maintain a continuous, sustained presence over Iran's airspace. Because of the exceptionally large volume of munitions they carry, specifically the advanced small-diameter bombs they can load in massive numbers, they possess a distinct operational advantage. They can constantly remain on station in critical areas whenever an immediate threat is received by intelligence. Now, this potential threat could be a mobile missile launcher moving into position, coastal centers for launching swarms of fast attack boats, or strategic storage and assembly points for hostile military or security forces. As soon as a drone or any other advanced intelligence asset detects that there's probably some significant movement happening at a certain point, these heavy B-1 aircraft and also the B-52s, 6 of which have recently been stationed at RAF Fairford, will fly on permanent standby. They can be immediately directed to that specific area to drop their payload of bombs. So this traditional separation of the tactical and strategic phases has to a very large extent already started to combine. This ongoing integration will continue much more specifically in the near future. In this dynamic way, they will try to continuously attack fleeting targets of opportunity, or unexpected chance targets, by leveraging cutting-edge, real-time intelligence feeds from the active battlefield.
Mr. Nadimi, before we go, I also want to ask you this. Maybe it's not directly related, but it seems, I don't know of course how much transparency the Israelis have in their system for showing errors compared to the Americans, but it seems that in these almost 2 weeks that have passed, the number of errors the Americans have made has been higher compared to the Israelis, whether it was about that Minob school, or their helicopters in Kuwait, or now about this refueling plane over Iraqi airspace. What do you think is happening? Why is it that so many mistakes are occurring that cause casualties, both on Iranian soil and among American forces themselves?
Yes, unfortunately, the recent targeting errors are truly regrettable, especially the tragic targeting of the Minob School, located next to the IRGC Navy Center. This specific event really needs to be thoroughly investigated, and strict measures must be implemented so similar incidents are prevented. Additionally, several other troubling incidents, much like what has recently occurred, are also under active investigation today. But anyway, in a wartime situation, the databases that exist for targets, in some cases they might be old databases, not updated, or a section of indicators that were very clear. For example, this very Minob school, well, it had a website, and if it were possible to combine confidential information with non-confidential information, many similar incidents could have been prevented and can be prevented. Well, in some cases this doesn't happen, and that's really unfortunate. Regarding airplanes, well, when you see thousands of hours of refueling flights and combat flights taking place, and really these pilots are just exhausted, and probably these errors and mistakes happen, and it might even increase. Regarding the American planes over Kuwait, where a Kuwaiti fighter jet mistakenly shot them down, here again it's the error of the IFF systems, or friend or foe identification, not being coordinated.
Thank you, Farzin Nadimi, Senior Research Fellow for Defense and Security Affairs at the Washington Institute, joining us from this city. I should also note that regarding MENAP, the Pentagon states it remains under investigation. Thank you for watching. You can watch this program again later on YouTube. We conclude the broadcast with images of the Beirut sky.